I drove by.
Wait a minute.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna call the village,
I know.
call to order to the Village of Lansing Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, to order at 7:02 PM.
Always.
7:02 PM, I know, right? First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for April 8th, 2024. I know that got circulated and there were a couple edits to it. Anything else anybody wanted to make?
Well, I guess you can do the draft part.
Well, you know, Mike will do that. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Pat,
Second.
second by Lisa. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Oh, abstaining.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Opportunity for anybody from the public to bring something up that isn't already on the agenda for this evening.
Susan Ainsley covering for the board.
Hey, Susan.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Carla Barstow, I'm here as an observer for the community party.
Hey, Carla. Okay, hearing nothing else, I entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
I'll move to close the public comment period.
Motion by Jim,
Second.
second by Lorraine, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion of tree law changes.
Okay.
And so there's a, I'll let you start.
No, I was just gonna say, the only thing I gave you was a copy of the tree law,
Yeah,
which is what Pat wants, Pat gets.
so, in addition to that, there's also, something else in here that we asked you for about, which is related to the tree law, and that is, we had asked Mike to go and, one of the things that kind of came up at the last meeting was Northeast Pete's tree law, and are the number of units right for commercial, are they right for residential, should they be different somehow? I forget who came up with a suggestion for some sort of calculation, but.
I think Yumila
Was
did.
it Yumila? So Mike went and did a calculation on Northeast Pete's, and you've got that in front of you with the map. And really what it boils down to is, and so the calculations here, because I asked Mike to clarify, are if they had just come in right off the bat and said, here's this thing that we want to do. So it takes into account none of the discussion we have about how many plants or things they've decided to plant ultimately. So if they had come in, they would have only been required to plant 6.6 units to meet things under this calculation. And they ended up agreeing to plant,
I think it's on 12 or 13.
12 or something.
Because this is taking away the building and the parking lot and everything else.
It's not taking away the building.
Oh, it isn't taking away the building. I thought we had talked about taking away the
Did
building.
talk about that. Have that.
Yeah, okay.
But it's already a lot more reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then,
Yes.
so there's that second, the very final calculation where if you took away the, or factored in the fact that they don't even have the minimum number of spots required, it would be even less. So either way, I don't know, I then asked, go ahead.
You know, I had a thought, though, about the residential piece, because I was thinking, and I was thinking we had said, take away the buildings. In the case of that residential situation, what triggered it was coming and asking to have an apartment or something where somebody could stay over and have. So that was the special permit, but the actual building of that building was a building permit, I guess. And so that made me think that, well, I mean, in that particular situation, I mean, the garage is way larger than his home. And, footprint-wise. So that wouldn't have triggered the tree thing, and yet if somebody is gonna build a building, it maybe should, is my point. Because that would be where you'd have to clear trees, I think, is when you add a building, as opposed to, because I think we're on the right track with saying, if the building is already there, and it's a special permit that triggers it, that doesn't make sense to really get too carried away here, because nothing has changed, like a home occupation, or in this situation, we're just making sure it's safe to be used for someone to sleep there or whatever. But the actual building, I suddenly thought about that, I thought, oh, that might be a situation where somebody might get a little carried away with clearing, is all my thinking.
Well, if they get if someone comes in, and a good example would be Dark Drive, where Habitat for Humanity came in and they clearly showed me that they were cutting more than 25% of the trees. So that's why I had to come to you in that case. Whereas you're talking about Zach, right?
Yeah,
He didn't have to clear anything
no, I know he
to
didn't.
put that building in there. So I'm not so sure that this law would apply to someone who just gets a building permit to put something up.
So in the case of the Dark Drive thing, I don't remember them coming to, I sort of remember with the lands, yeah, I guess.
No, they can't, because
Yeah,
remember we
that's
said,
right,
hey, put
okay.
some street trees then.
So it
yeah, I
did,
mean, they were-
because of that, okay.
And a building permit doesn't come to you guys already.
No, it
It's special
doesn't.
permit, because
Yeah.
it comes to you, and so does the subdivision, so it'd just be adding a lot.
But that one came to us because of the clearing. Okay, as long as we've got it covered, I think it makes a lot of sense to, you know, to look at the way this looks at it.
And the thing about whether, if it's a special use, if the special use permit, if it's because of a change of use, and there's no change to the footprint, I could see us wanting to waive this. I think anytime you do add any impervious area to your property, I think that's something that we should have as kind of like a benchmark of when we trigger a law, because if you're adding impervious area, because you're building a building, you get your special permit, you're expanding a driveway, things like that, you are changing the way like water flows on your property. And that is one of the major things that our tree law is meant to do. It's meant to slow the flow of rainwater.
I think a lot of those things, those don't trigger this, just because somebody wants to pave their driveway, that won't be
Would
triggered.
it, would it
Just
even
because
come to
somebody-
you if someone's paving their driveway?
If they're paving the driveway, in most cases, no.
Right.
Yeah,
Unless it's commercial, then I could see it's possible.
right.
But,
Or in this case, expanding.
I mean, if you get someone that just puts in a tool shed that is greater than the criteria,
Whatever the square footage.
yeah, there's a certain square footage, you don't need a building permit, but all of a sudden they get a tool shed and they need a building permit for it, do we really want to come to the planning board?
Not especially unless there's a reason, like,
I mean, you'll be overrun.
That's a
it's all-
lot. That's my
all we'd be
concern, is
doing.
that's a lot.
okay, no, I just wanted to sort of talk that through
Yeah.
about his situation there, because I know he didn't have to clear anything.
But then there would be other things in here, right? If you want to put in such, something that's clearly not an accessory, right, it's not a tool shed anymore, it's a accessory structure, or or some big driveway or something that necessitates the clearing of trees, then we do have that, that, as long as it meets a certain criteria, the 25%, that it would trigger this regardless, like the Habitat House did.
Right, short of the cutting of the trees, there wasn't anything there for a special permit, would have had to come from.
But it was quantity that they wanted to cut that triggered this.
So this is the existing situation.
Yeah,
But
this
if
is-
it's a brand-new development, and they come to us, like, I think originally we're thinking of the one over on Uptown.
All right.
How does that work? I'd like to just sort of talk about that a little bit.
They'd have to do a survey of what's existing, and then they'd come in with, I didn't mean to jump.
No.
They would have to come in with a site plan. And at that point, we can kind of calculate how many trees that they're gonna need if we have a formula. And then that would help them develop a landscaping plan, of what trees they want to leave or whatnot. Then they'd have to come back with us with, I guess, an advanced site plan showing what trees are going to leave and whatnot.
Yeah, okay.
And also, you'd have to have the building located on there to see what the parking situation would be like.
And the parking requirements.
And the parking requirements for the building, yeah, so it's,
In that case, it's almost like you actually do have to go kind of a lot further down the road to work backwards and figure out, the tree portion of it. You can develop your building,
But they'll
but,
also have the calculation in the code, so they themselves can kind of get a rough estimate of what they're gonna need while they're designing the drawing before they come to us.
So the formula is,
I thought it was acreage minus building minus required parking?
You gonna go minus building? Is it-
I think it was minus building. I mean, I'm happy to be
If it's
correct.
existing, I would say, yeah.
Yeah,
If it's an existing building, but what if it's new?
What if it's
What if,
new?
right,
Yeah,
what
this
if,
is
what
what
if we're talking about Uptown, and they do come in and put a new,
Giant buildings.
right, you can put, you can almost get around some, right, so, well, we want to cut down a lot of trees, so
Make it all.
we're not gonna make it 2 stories, we're gonna make it 1 really big story. So, yeah, I don't know. In this case, though, you said building isn't subtracted,
Correct.
and this works out well for them, so the calculation can either exclude it, or if we want something for existing versus new building. For existing building, existing structures, I don't know.
Right, and when you also have the right-of-way as subtracted out of there too, which is something that we didn't talk about before, but we can certainly consider.
Just because the village has plans for that area, so I think it would be unfair, like, they really can't use it to the extent that
Yeah.
regular private property would be used. They couldn't
Right.
plant anything there.
Right.
Yeah,
So we should subtract it.
Should subtract the right of way,
So we should subtract the right-of-way, we should definitely
subtract the park.
subtract any required parking,
Yeah, we need to, okay,
but not any additional parking. So if they're only required to have 10 spots and they have 20, we're only going to subtract the 10 required.
And then in a situation with Northeast Peds where they can't have as much as they're required to have, just existing parking?
Right, and
Because then Mike then added a second calculation if they had,
it would even be less.
So required parking or existing parking, whatever, whichever,
or higher.
it's whatever's lower.
Because if you figured the building in on that, I mean, I could probably go do a quick calculation, but you're probably gonna be close to them, only need to put in 1 or 2 units.
which I
We
don't,
did say that we thought the lot already looked pretty well,
It looked
yeah,
good,
yeah.
it was.
yeah.
but I don't, go ahead, sorry, you know.
I was gonna say, so then so right away, required parking, that's easy. The building is a little stickier.
Yeah, it is.
Because, yeah, you're absolutely right. Somebody might say, oh, well, I'll just make a really
Yeah,
big
that-
building,
we
and
know
it's,
that
Yeah.
People will do these
people
things.
will do those
They
things.
will do those things.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it 2 stories over here and 1 story over here so I can build it out, and yeah.
Oh, okay, so,
Then I'm gonna add a second
so
story.
that begs a question for me, and I'm afraid I'm not familiar enough with our code to know the answer. Do we have anything in our code that tells us lot coverage percentages?
And for commercial, in most cases, there's no limit for the lot
So
coverage.
it could be 100%?
I know in commercial high traffic, there is, let me double check.
Yeah, because I think that, knowing our lot coverage regulations might help us understand whether the building
Should or
should or should not.
You're still going to get some trees, like Mike and I were talking, the example, if they come in for Dick's over there, and it's all parking lot, they have no grass area whatsoever, you still have parking lot trees. The calculation for the parking lot trees.
Yes,
Yeah, so that's their opportunity, they're gonna have to convert some of the parking lot
Right.
trees.
Yeah.
Right, because otherwise, if we subtracted the building, they do 0.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's no pervious area, but I think looking at the calculation for Northeast Peds, they came in, if they had come in and we had this in place, either one of these, I would have looked at that and said, I think you can fit 6.5 units on there, they fit 12, and I don't think it was a stretch.
Right.
no, it
So-
wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, I
Is
almost,
this even enough?
well, and there's
So I guess maybe the thing is, if we're going to be removing these portions,
yeah.
the parking in the right-of-way for sure, then maybe we do want to adjust the numbers differently.
A little
So-
bit, yeah.
Because I think our number that we have now of per unit, per acre, is kind of a very broad brush.
Yeah.
But if we're going to fine tune that, maybe we want something that's going to be a little bit more pointed.
right.
And we really do have to think about how to, well, the other question that begs is, it is becoming more and more common practice to abolish parking
I was
minimums.
just gonna say, given what we heard on that, the Zoom thing that we attended.
Yeah, and,
A lot of the required parking is, and even the guy at Taco mentioned, Bell mentioned that, they've got so much drive-through
Yeah.
now,
Yep.
that I think it's something we're gonna have to look at, but I think to start with, we probably should.
For commercial, there's no,
No.
for residential, you're talking 15 to 25%, depending on whether you're low density or.
Yeah, so, it sounds like we don't want to consider the building in the calculation, because.
In commercial.
And
yeah.
commercial,
yeah.
yeah.
Whereas if it's a 15 to 20% lot coverage for residential, that would probably be well within a calculation.
Well,
And they don't have parking requirements.
and they don't have parking requirements, so right, when we talked about this, I mean, this was more for commercial and not residential.
So maybe,
Or that was one of the options, at least, hey, residential stays the same as we have in the law now, this is strictly a commercial calculation, or maybe there's a way to do a residential calculation too, I don't know.
I think it,
I think
that
it would
might
be
a
nicer if
little-
we did.
I think so.
It would help people who are planning, I mean, people want to go build a new house or whatever. It really helps to know in advance what you're up against, I think, because some of this stuff gets forgotten. And then at the last minute, now it's like, oh my God, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Whereas if you plan for it, it isn't a big deal.
Yeah,
And people are willing to do it often, because it's not more expensive. So we're basically saying for commercial, we have the acreage minus the right-of-way minus the required parking.
Or existing, whatever is lower.
or the existing,
Or
whatever is
existing,
lower.
or existing
Parking.
parking, whichever is lower, and that gives us our acreage, or our whatever.
Right, the plantable acreage, or the acreage that goes into the planting calculation.
Plantable area.
and then it's the same thing, right, when you said, hey, it's 30 tree units per acre, okay, it's still 30 tree units per acre, it's just a lot smaller acreage now.
So we're keeping the 30 tree units per acre.
We should probably change that to like, plantable acre, I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be necessarily plantable,
Yeah, it's
No,
not,
no,
yeah.
I think it's fine, just leave it
Yeah.
acre.
yeah.
I think that one of the biggest things we have to do is be sure that we could waive some of this. Then
Oh, well, yeah, that
Yeah,
would be
that's the
built in.
biggest thing, because, but I think this gives
Regardless.
people a real good idea of what
Yeah.
to plan for. I think
So then residential, subtract out
you have
the building square footage?
Yeah,
That's what you're gonna have there, I
Accessory
mean.
buildings?
I guess accessory buildings.
I mean, most accessory buildings, whether it's 144 square feet is the amount that,
The threshold.
the threshold below which you don't need a permit. So a lot of sheds are that or smaller.
But, I mean, swimming pools are considered accessory buildings as well.
There's a whole bunch of things in that section there.
Okay.
It's an accessory, depends on the size of the pool, then you get into a principal building.
So it's acre minus building,
Nice principal building
principal building, or just,
and accessory building? Or no, and accessory building?
yeah, that's a
I would
good,
I mean, it
Principal building, really.
almost sounds like we're moving in the direction of improving the surface on a residential building too. I mean, the only thing we haven't covered is
parking.
driveway.
Well, maybe we should. No.
There's no required parking. Would there ever be a situation in which we have some sort of required parking amount for any residential building that we can foresee?
It's a home occupation, might there be? If it's
There's nothing in our code for residential for,
even a home occupation,
unless it's a multi-unit or a duplex, and yeah.
we have multi-units.
So, yeah, how do we deal with
Houses and
multi-unit buildings?
multi-units. Uh-oh.
So
Duplex has a lot line.
Yeah, they
So,
do,
I mean,
they do,
that
yeah,
was- but-
it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
And
duplexes you can kind of calculate as if they were single family.
and townhouses also.
And townhouses,
Yeah.
so, single family, townhouses,
Multi,
It's-
multi can be,
In general, your residential is 1.5 per unit. You 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
it's not a requirement, it's just kind of a rule of thumb. Do we have requirements for multifamily buildings? So I'm assuming, what, 5 units or more?
apartments, yes.
The same as 1.5.
Most of our apartments are, which, yeah,
Is that per bedroom?
I'm sorry,
Per bedroom, is that calculation, 1.5
per unit, it's 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
per unit? So like a 3-bedroom unit would have the same number as a studio?
It's all flexible also, because you can go by what we have in the code, or you can go by New York State depending on how you want to calculate it.
So what about accessory buildings? And sometimes they are bigger than the principal buildings. You know.
Yeah. Do we want to say the first 144 square feet of accessory buildings do not need to be counted towards this, but anything more than that? Or, no, but then that still advantages folks that have these large.
There's a limit on the number of accessory buildings you can have.
I'm sorry?
Isn't there a limit on the number of accessory buildings you can have?
I don't know, I don't think so.
Oh, how about this? What if we just do up to whatever our limit of lot coverage is? So we have a 50% or a 20% lot coverage.
That makes
So
more sense.
it's your primary plus your accessory buildings.
Not to exceed something, yeah,
Not to
whatever.
exceed whatever your lot coverage is for your zoning.
Don't they already not exceed
We're
that?
starting to get
Complicated,
weeds here,
yeah.
calculating this. I mean, I could see the home and everything, but, I mean, you could have
For the most part, the accessory buildings aren't going to be an issue, do you think? Or,
you could have an accessory building that's not fixed to the ground, that's moving.
right,
That's where it's getting kind of.
And is
So
this,
just the principal
and is,
building?
I was gonna say, and is this too confusing? Again, we've been talking about not making this,
Okay.
like, we're having a hard time understanding, I mean, of course, we're just throwing our options right now, but, you know, maybe it's right, you know, maybe it's just the primary.
so.
Just the principal building only?
Or Horowitz property,
Which one?
Horowitz property,
Which one's that? Oh, right.
right across the way.
Yeah.
115 acres,
115
Well,
acres,
also,
okay,
a lot
but
of that's farming.
there's a farmhouse, and then there's a huge, whatever, accessory building.
Barn.
I mean,
Barn.
that's not an accessory, well, I mean,
That's considered a barn.
Yeah, it is a barn. He does keep machinery in there.
it's ag property.
Yeah. Well, it's ag exempt, it's not ag property.
Okay,
Yeah, and that's another thing. Are you gonna subtract for farmable area?
It's not in the ag district.
It's not in the ag district, but he has an ag
he has
exemption.
an exemption, yeah.
A lot of that's hayed. It's actively hayed. You're gonna make him plant trees in the middle of the hayfield?
when people have to do the haying, they need a place for shade to take a break.
I'm gonna go with no.
There's always a,
Disagree with
there's
that.
always a
Disagree with
shade
what he
tree in the middle of a farm.
There's
Almost
trees
always.
out there.
He has a lot, sure.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But there really usually is, and
Yeah,
for that
well, there's
reason,
trees
yeah.
out there. But that would be like a very specific.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to think of possibilities here.
Anything with like, I know that we haven't addressed it as a village yet, but like short-term rentals or anything with that with
Oh, boy.
parking.
boy.
I don't know if there's anything in there about, there's some pretty big houses here. that
I
you
don't
can
know if we
I don't know
want to
if
think
it's-
about parking for residential, because then it's just gonna be like the square
No, we
footage of the
shouldn't.
space versus driveway versus like
No,
the
that's-
turnaround.
I don't
versus-
disagree, just,
We just leave it to the building.
And of course, it would be the same thing, it would encourage folks to, well, I'll just make a bigger driveway.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, yeah, no,
Yeah, I think building only in the right-of-way is probably adequate for the residential, for single-family residential or duplex or triplex, I mean, a duplex or a townhouse.
so it's acre minus principal building minus right of way,
Minus right away.
okay, equals whatever, plantable area.
We shouldn't call it plantable area, because it's
Yeah.
probably, because there's driveway, there's
It might
swimming
not,
pool,
and it might not actually be plantable area.
Yeah,
but calculated
Calculated.
an area or something like that.
Open acreage, I mean, it's calculable, yeah,
any ideas?
Way.
right.
What are we gonna call it?
Calculated usable area.
Yeah,
What did you call it?
calculated usable area. Anyway,
I'm not gonna put a definition.
right, yeah.
What did we decide about shrubs?
Well, I think that's a question though,
gonna say-
when Dan comes in, right, is to focus in on that a little bit.
Yeah, all of the general conditions for tree planting plan should be Dan.
Yeah.
Actually, it feels-
So do we, so
there's that sort of new piece of
the
it.
residential piece of it. Do we want an example of one somewhere?
Yeah, you
That Michael
wanna
can generate.
grab a few homes and see what it would do for us?
I guess we should, yeah, duplex or a townhouse. For example, looking at Bonnewell property, for example. All of those, all the Lansing trails, all the townhouses. There aren't a lot
But
of
there's,
trees.
but there's lot lines on those townhouses. Aren't
I
they
know.
sold as parcels?
They were sold as individual parcels.
Yeah,
Right, then that would,
So acreage minus building, boom,
yeah.
and right away, yeah.
and right away.
Okay, so that works.
Yeah.
Where else do we have multiple units?
You've got all of your multi-unit duplex or complexes here. You're talking about Uptown Village.
Lansing
you're
Trails,
talking
of course, itself, is, there's a lot of duplexes there.
I still think it,
Yeah,
It makes sense that it should, but I think maybe that's, maybe,
Yeah, as maybe grab some,
different types of
different
properties.
types of, as you do a couple
Okay, over in
calculations.
Shannon Park, the Stone whatever way, aren't those
Those are
duplexes?
condos?
But there's still two multi-family, right?
Shannon.
In the back of Shannon
In the
Park.
back.
Yeah, there's two different types.
There's a one along against the mall, and then the one down,
There's,
I always forget what it's,
there's rentals, there's multi-unit rentals, and then there's owner occupied.
Stone something way.
Stony Creek,
What?
Stony Creek.
Yep,
I think how,
thank you.
they're multi-units, but they're owned.
Does that matter?
Still multi-units.
So it's a condo?
condo or co-op.
I don't know if you classify them as condos, I don't know whether they have a separation wall between them or not. I mean, they were built.
They must have a firewall. Really? Oh, so what, but what
They're not
difference?
different, they're not different lot lines, so they don't have to have a firewall.
Oh, so if they aren't different lot lines, then
Well,
how does that
condo is less
work?
about how it's built and how the offering plan is
Yeah.
set up.
Norway, they're condos, because they have a lot line and they have 2-hour firewall. But the ones over here, Shannon Park,
I think they're condos. I just
No, I think-
poured over that an abstract for Shannon Park for like 4 hours.
I don't think they are either. So how would
Well, in
that,
any event, we can look
at some
at
others,
that
yeah.
and see what would happen in the back of
Okay.
Shannon Park for them.
So then the other thing I had mentioned to Mike is I'm curious, how would this play into, I'll pick on Dick's, just because
Yep,
that is a completely different example, right? There's one that just has
Pavement.
all paved between building and structure. What would it look like if someone were to just have Dick's? And I'm assuming that most of the
with
parking they have, what's that?
We did it with Cuba Med.
but even more, I would think.
Yeah, I'm just, I don't know, but yeah, with Kate and that, we have history. Now, I'm just curious, if you took, say somebody wanted to take Dick's in the parking, I'm assuming that most of the parking that comes with that parcel is just straight out from it, maybe
Yeah.
it bleeds over.
We
But
have that.
could you look at that one too, and just apply the calculation and say, how many trees would you have to put out in the parking area? I think that would be a.
Well, you know, it
Or tree
says
units.
here, planted in or around the parking lot every 40 feet,
you want me to figure something?
still need the parking lot tree, even if.
Yeah, just for Dick's, like, what
Yeah.
would,
Because they'd have to subdivide that lot again to have just in front of Dick's, because that parcel.
Is that all one
sticks
big-
all the way down to the west side.
They have a.
or is there a,
Subdivided it.
or is there a
And then
better
the
example?
Required parking would depend on the use.
Yeah.
Oh, the required parking, yeah.
Yeah, would require on what they're gonna use it for.
I would assume, without looking it up, that like a storage facility would take less parking.
Less parking.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they can,
So you want me to try to calculate one multifamily
yep,
unit, one single family,
sure.
and then one like a commercial like Dick's?
Yeah, see if you can find
If
something
you can
that's.
think of, yes, anything that might
Any good
be,
example, maybe Cayuga Med is a good example, because we know there's a specific use for that already, and we know what it was before, which was all pavement.
Okay.
Just see. Because then we can also, I guess maybe Cayuga Med is a good example, because then we can also look and say, oh, well, it looks like there's X number of units there that meets it, or no, they'd have to put twice as much in, or 3 times as much, or something.
been nice to have more, but.
But this might be the
How
opportunity
about-
for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
a place like the Cayuga Mall. Next time they do something.
Well, that's one parcel, except for Taco Bell.
Parking lot trees, that's all.
I mean, that's, right, that's the opportunity there, it's that or tree bank, that's
Yeah,
really,
really, that's it.
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
well, little progress.
Well, I'm not trying to bring up something else, but let's say you take Cuba Mall, you have, like, the Veterans Clinic comes in. Needs a special permit. Are you calculating?
Yeah.
I wanted to, as you recall, I wanted to do that. I
And then
did
they're
want
a
to do
tenant, they don't
that.
own it, like,
That's-
they can't do anything.
But I think under those circumstances, we have to somehow get to the parking lot. How can we?
Does the special permit's written to the owner, not to the tenant?
Yeah.
So
So
then,
that's-
then that's,
I mean, the VA will pay it for whatever they have to do, that the landlord has to do, but it just complicates it.
Yeah, there needs to be a carve out for that, because I don't think it's reasonable for us to, because the VA wants to move into a storefront, I mean, in that example,
But it
they
is
want to
the
move in
owner,
there.
it's the owner that needs to make
that-
movements
do
over
the-
there.
That's fine,
application.
I don't care who has to make the improvements, I don't think it's fair because a tenant wants to move in for us to now take the entire parking lot there into account, and just so
Right,
we can have more trees, I think you should focus in on the area that, or maybe in places like that, because we don't have that many of them around the village, honestly. I mean, I think there's probably a few more than the two malls, but maybe there's a way to work with the, you know, the developer, the owner, to come up with some, we had mentioned, you know, a 3 or 5, or something, a multi-year plan to address things like this.
I would like that.
but you know what?
That's the
Having,
way to do it.
having this in the books gives us plenty of leverage to do that. You know, like, yeah, I mean, we would have to require you to put 30 units in right now, but we realize that that's not reasonable, so let's put a plan together for the next, 10
it'll go along with-
years,
Ability to modify it.
But I think that should specifically be stated then in the code, you know, as we take certain things into consideration. Oh, solar panels is a thing, whatever is a thing. Also, larger commercial areas that are mostly parking, however you want to phrase it, you know, that's also a special consideration. Not a special consideration where we would necessarily decrease it, but a special consideration where we might give, hey, the flexibility is a multi-year plan to do this.
And just for the record, and I think we need to make sure that we're clear on this, while having solar on a building is a consideration in terms of energy use, it does 0 for stormwater management.
But one of the other things that's in the tree plan is the offset of carbon emissions, so it's not just.
So it's not just that, yeah.
Oh, but it also, they don't help you with heat islands and everything else, like all the
Yeah.
state.
Right, yep.
So
Right.
there's other reasons,
Yeah.
yeah, but it is a consideration.
And that might be something, right, that.
Carbon piece.
Yeah, that we
Yes.
want, and I think we had, that's one of the things we had glanced over, right, because it was just the introduction, the little description. If we want to build that out, we can build that out, I think that
we need to.
the time, that's, I think, a easier thing for us all to agree on or have suggestions about than the meat of kind of talking about some of the actual items. I have to download this again because I can't see your comments in here. Were there any other questions before Mike goes off and does more calculable calculations?
Yeah, just when you do the multi-unit calculation, how many units are you looking at? Because, if it's a 5-unit building, that may be one thing, whereas it's, 45, it's a whole different thing. So maybe a small multi-family versus a large, I don't know.
What do we have?
I was gonna say, I don't know what the most common,
Yeah, I have no idea.
A multi-unit is anything over 2. So it's an apartment house, apartment complex.
Yeah, 3 or above, yeah.
I don't know enough about our apartment.
Well, the other thing to consider is, one of the things that we've been talking about is, in the near future, do we want to, rezone for for mixed use? When you do that, you do end up with different sizes of
Yeah.
things. And if we want to make this law be an evergreen one, we might want to consider, what would that be?
So you gotta come up with those, the CUAs for those,
Yeah.
like that.
He's on board now that he's got.
Now he has
the
an
acronym.
acronym.
He's like, you got an acronym
Was
for
it
this? I can do it.
incalculable?
Okay,
Calculated usable area.
so here's a question. Looking at our zoning map, would it be useful to look at it low-density versus, medium versus high-density residential? Assuming that multifamily would fit into those zones based on the number of units?
The multifamily is only gonna be allowed in your medium, or no, your multifamily is only allowed in your
In your
high density.
high density? So medium density, there's no 3-unit buildings?
More than likely, you have 2-unit buildings. There's only one I know of, and that had a variance that's been here for so long.
Okay.
I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
So, the Millcroft,
Yeah, those are all single.
those are all single or
Were there
duplex.
duplexes, and then there was some,
Duplex, and then
some townhomes.
Single or duplexes are.
Okay. All right,
So we'd just be talking about like the apartment complexes.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't go crazy, but
yeah, I was gonna say.
it helps to kind of,
Yeah, to
Have-
understand if we want to take
Yeah.
parking out of the apartment complexes
Yeah.
or not.
I mean, I can't generally, it doesn't ever seem like parking's a problem at any of the apartment complexes when I drive by them.
Okay.
We'll see what the calculations say.
Yep, okay. It's all in the numbers.
So the other thing is, we didn't get all the way through the existing tree law last time. I think the bulk of the stuff left was really questions for Dan. It was, you know, the big thing at the bottom was,
Understory, overstory, mix of green and
Yeah, you know, we had some
evergreen and
questions
deciduous.
about mature size, or like, you know, a
Yeah.
percentage of mature, you know, what is it at 60% of mature size, and I think we can bounce some of those questions out again. There were a couple other comments in here, though.
that I think we have time to go over tonight, and I think, and everybody's got a copy of the, and I will refer to the page numbers, but everybody's got the copy of the tree law in front of them. It's dated March 2023, in the
Yeah.
bottom left. So we had left off, we had finished,
So if you go to
General,
145,
row 24,
yep,
so really page 3, if you're looking at it. We had pretty much gotten all the way down to additional conditions for street trees and parking lot trees. One of the comments in here, and I think this goes to something else, is adding a section about what's appropriate for street trees,
oh, yes, the type,
and I think we want to try
to
to,
generate something anyway that's,
we have a list of, you know, a list of,
of trees.
but I think we wanted to build
That out and update it regularly, make it an appendix, so I think having a section in there,
for street trees, not just for the tree law, but in, I mean, even, you know,
planting across trip hammer, having a section in there for what's an appropriate street tree, wherever you're putting it for whatever reason.
yeah, because you don't want all the same.
right, well, and to Jim's point too, I don't think we want people coming up and down Trip Hammer just saying, I'm planting pine trees everywhere, up and down, and there you go.
I was just going to bring up the subject of Christmas tree
There you go.
evergreens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I should probably take some pictures of some of these places I've seen. Yeah, mound of dirt, playing with grass, and like just, maybe not military precision, but just a row of like Christmas tree evergreens.
Between East Point and
Yes.
Yeah,
Lansing Trails, that's exactly what you have. A row of pine trees behind the townhouses.
Yeah.
As you're going over towards the, if you drive over to the post office from here.
You know, a lot of times I come back from the post office that way, because I want to drive through there, and I hadn't noticed those.
Yeah, but it's,
Oh my gosh, I can't,
on the-
I think of you every time I see them, I think, oh, Jim would have a fit.
I like that.
but it's not on the East Point property. It's-
No, it isn't, it's, but I'm just saying, it's exactly what he said. The thing that I remember is,
I'll look
years
next time.
ago, when I first moved here, I attended something at the Extension Service, and they were doing Meadow Street, or maybe it's the other one, but I call them both Meadow Street, but regardless of direction. And they talked about Cornell soil so that street trees would stay healthy. But they also talked about having different types of trees so that they don't all die off at once. And you know, to this day, they still are pretty darn healthy, and it's been 25+ years. So it really does matter that they be different species.
And we had that,
Yeah,
we had that, I had a note about that.
yes, I know, but I want to be
And
sure
it's
it doesn't
mentioned,
get,
yeah.
yeah.
Is it mentioned in street trees, though?
It's
It
not
should
mentioned
be
in
the
street
same?
trees, no.
No.
So there's a mention under
That
3,
you mentioned.
general conditions for tree planting plan, G and H, talk about percentage of trees should, so that it's a mix. And that language isn't quite right, but if we can figure out a way to bring in what Lisa was talking about variety
Yeah.
of species and percentage of X number of species, once we have that language nailed down, we can just bring that language into that other section as well.
And why, maybe I have a thing about evergreen trees. Why do we want to have 25% evergreen trees?
Well, those are things we're gonna go.
Yeah, those are Dan
Talk to the
questions.
guy from Plantsman. We were gonna ask, the fellow that's gonna come and talk to us from the Plantsman Nursery, we thought these were some of the questions we could ask him about. What does he think of this? Because this is one of the things that the guy raised, that you spoke to, that from the forestry.
Oh, right, yeah.
He said he was querying certain things, and this was one of them, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
yeah.
And so I think it's important that we hear from a professional, another professional, why.
We flag it as something to discuss or as something that's beneficial?
It was more of like a question
Yeah,
about.
why would you
Why
do
is
this
this?
sort of?
Okay.
It might be, yeah, that needs to be adjusted, or there needs to be something else
Yeah.
added in it, but yeah.
Yeah, because that's the first thing I wonder, why?
Yeah, so we'll ask Dan when he shows up.
In that section.
Devil's advocate, and I don't understand, all behind trees, and I understand the point of zoning is to kind of control what people can do on their land, but what if people like the look of uniform trees on their property? And that's what they want to put on their property, that they bought, and you're gonna say, no, you can't do that.
Well, I don't know, are we going to say that?
Like, I like the look of a row of evergreen trees. I like it. I think it's
How could you
clean,
possibly?
I think it's tidy, I think it can really separate a space nicely. I like boxwoods all over my yard.
I like boxwoods.
But like, so
Because I can
you're gonna
plant
tell
them and they
people, no,
don't
you
die.
can't do that on the property that you bought, no.
Can't the same question be posed, though, about zoning requirements for
Well, that's all, yeah, and
the
I
architectural appearance of a house?
said that's zoning, I understand that's zoning, but just to play through how this is gonna, how the public might react to it when they come to you, and they say, well, I really like to cover my house in all of those same trees, and now you're telling me I can't.
Yeah, I mean, our job is to, really look at the health, safety, and welfare. And if you have a situation where you cover it all with one type of tree, and we get a disease, and they all come down, then you're left with basically a bald lot. And what we're trying to do is hedge our bets so that doesn't happen, both for the aesthetics, but also for the health, safety, and welfare.
Yeah, and I guess I'll use, I don't know if there is such a term, public aesthetics. What does the public see when they're driving?
It varies from every person, Jim. See, I like the look of the row of trees that you hate, so that's person to
Well, this is
person.
it, you can't legislate
Oh, yeah.
aesthetics, really.
Exactly, but.
Well, in our
We
country,
are.
anyway. Well, it depends on the zoning, because certainly
Yeah.
there are places where you can,
Yeah.
but we have not done that.
Like, I do think Northeast was getting a little bit to that point when we were telling her what can and cannot be planted, that this is what they like on their parcel and has worked for them, and I think she was getting a little upset. I understand her upset. They're spending all the money to do it, and they want it to look a certain way for their business, and then we're saying, well, we know better than that, so we're gonna let you do that. Which I understand all the reasons that you said, but just
I think-
anticipate that from applicants.
Well, I think if we provide a list of trees that will perhaps flourish here and not be gobbled up by deer in the first
Right.
year or so, that's as much as we can do, really.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to try to make them aware of the desirability of maybe having a mix of even types of trees, if possible. But I understand too, because I have planted so many trees that just don't grow in our particular situation.
Yeah.
The soil's constantly washing away, and they'll go for a while, and then, And then the little ones, unless you protect them until they get bigger than I am, you know,
Yeah.
the deer are just gonna eat them, and it's not easy, so
Yeah.
I needed some guidance from the outset
Just a
myself.
thought.
Well, at any rate, I
But you're
think
right,
we can.
but you're right, you're not,
And
you're
I think
right.
this, we could include language, especially in that kind of introductory piece, that the reason that we have these rules is not just for aesthetics, it's also for, you know, the ecological function, and to make sure that we keep villagers safe from a situation where we have a massive die-off of any particular species. And I think that's enough context.
You should just be careful with the language, right, because,
Yeah.
so I noted that, and
It's all
as
about the
we,
language.
as we move along, we can
Yeah.
take that into, or when we come back to revisit, like,
Yeah,
you know, as-
everything.
when we go and finally say, hey, here's a round of changes, what do we all think about this?
Yes.
We can take that into
But we're
account.
getting closer.
Was there anything else under the street trees piece? I mean, it pretty much talks about, you know, being planted in the right of way, at least 5 feet behind the edge. Is that, I mean, that's all, I think, pretty standard stuff, so that's at the bottom of page 145, 24.
I should go back to that, remember the one we passed along, where it's gonna run the commercial low traffic guidelines? Or the one that study that somebody did for the village 40 years ago? And the design guidelines and stuff, we should look at that.
We should.
Because I think it's sort of like this, but it was really, you know, studied, well thought out, and the whole bit. And,
You want it sent to you?
Yeah, can you send it again? Yeah, there might be
Yeah.
some good information in
for
there.
everybody, just to take a peek again.
3 in there is, you know, a minimum of 1 street tree every 40 feet of road frontage, you know,
Spaced as evenly as possible.
there's that kind of, what if I don't want it? Well, to your point, what if
Every
I don't
40
want it?
feet.
Can I do it
Okay, but
closer?
I do have an observation, and I don't think it necessarily has to change our calculation, but we removed the right-of-way from the calculation of CUA, and then we have them planted in the right-of-way
For street trees.
for street trees. That count towards minimum density, that count toward,
Oh, it's, yeah, because then,
minimum
no, oh, that's the parking lot trees that, oh, it says, however, we still must meet the tree requirements, even if it,
Yeah,
and,
as you get down,
but I know the right-of-way, you know, is the road, and then there's a little bit of
yeah.
not right-of-way on a lot, but you're having them plant in a right-of-way when we're taking it out of the plantable area. Just to.
And honestly, I don't know if it's a great idea to say plant them in the right of way, because then that, it makes people less sure about who's responsible for the thing. And certainly with, you know, when you've got drainage and, you know, like they dredge out the drainage, you end up cutting the roots and stuff like that, so.
We end up having to go and do maintenance, and now we're taking out the swath of trees. to
Yeah,
do whatever,
yeah.
yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Well, we can review that too.
So we can say just behind the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what would John Courtney say?
Talking about planting street trees?
No, just not putting them in the right of way, but
In the
putting them
right of
like,
way.
just- I think John would be fine with that, now stuff's not in the right of way and in his way,
He would
needs to
prefer
try to
they
go and
not
do
be.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, John would say something to the degree.
Don't, maybe not for public
Trees are gonna fall in the road, all the leaves are gonna fall into the ditch, clogging up culvert, I think that's the direction John would go.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a storage drain,
Not to
you'd
speak
be
for him.
foolish not to go and clean it yourself.
Imagine it, right?
Yes,
That's, he is.
you don't have a brain.
There you go.
Okay, so that makes sense then. This should not be
The minimum of 1 every 40 feet, I mean, we can,
for big trees, otherwise,
Well, the other thing too, okay, so.
want them to
If you
get
want, if you want to,
sunshine.
if you want to complicate things a little bit more, one side of this road will have power lines and the other side of the road will not. So if you are on the side of the road that has power lines, you're going to be limited on what size of a tree you can put in there. And so, say you're putting a bunch of crab apples or something, a beautiful
And
line
they're
of
not
crab
gonna
apples
be
in a
40
row,
feet. Put
they're
them
never going to be
closer,
40 feet, you're
right.
going to need them closer.
No less, so a minimum it says though. It says a
A
minimum,
minimum.
so you can put more.
Yeah, but people are going to put the minimum.
But yeah, they're gonna say, oh, well, I'm at the minimum.
Right, they're like, well, I only need 3 trees here, I'm gonna space them around, they're only gonna be, you know, these kind of
It'll look
shorter
spotty
things.
and crummy, I know.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to differentiate between people who are under power lines versus not, because it changes,
No.
changes what you can put in there.
Well, why don't we revisit that another time? Maybe people are getting tired.
Maybe we need some trees.
Nice they can come in and say, well, we're gonna move the power lines from that side of the
Well,
road
no,
to this side of
sometimes
the
when
road.
you,
No,
we've
yeah.
just had too many things, and a new idea is brought up, it's like, oh, God, no, no. So sometimes you just have to put it aside,
Put a pin in that one for now, yeah.
that's all. I'm just suggesting, maybe.
How to provide chocolate.
Before we get down to, trees being horticulturally appropriate, to be used in that area, and then, right, we don't want something that's gonna impede, utility easements, things like that. Hopefully, if we do make that little adjustment above, moving them back a little bit, it has less of an impact on, especially easements there, and utilities too. And then there's that comment in there, right, that Natalie just brought up about counted as part of the required minimum tree density, however, they still have to meet the tree requirement, or the CC requirements, which I think is
That's
fine.
how we got
Yeah.
Lisa's neighbor.
Yep, and he was fine with it.
Yeah.
And I think, what did he plan, 2?
He's gonna, once the
He was
sewer
worried about the
is
sewer.
fully,
Was it 2 then?
when they're finished with the sewer, yes.
I think it was 2, yeah.
Okay.
Parking lot trees, hey, we just talked about that a little bit ago, too.
And I think some of this will,
Maybe lend itself when we see a calculation or something from Mike about what, if you say, pick Coyote Meg, if they come back, and we say, well, the number's, 100, oh, well,
Yeah.
maybe there's some things here that,
You're actually not gonna have very many, because what does it say, 140 feet?
yeah,
Yeah,
So
right.
you got 80 feet between each tree, that's really not that many.
no, it isn't. In fact, I think it's kind of too few, but
But, given the size of the parking lot, if we say, congratulations,
you have to, you can't get away with planting them,
80 feet away from each other, now they have to be, they're gonna have to be closer for you just to get that minimum number, so.
so every time I go down to the inner City Harbor, whatever is the new Guthrie building,
Oh, that's
Right.
nice.
their parking lot is great.
Yep.
It is absolutely great.
Yeah.
And they have about 11 spots, and then they have a tree. So however many,
At the Guthrie one.
Yeah.
yeah, right there on the inlet, kind of, near the
I
marina.
haven't been down in there.
Yeah, the city has a regulation that you can't have more than 10 parking spots in a row before you hit a tree.
So maybe we should look at the city's regulation.
It could be, yeah.
And along,
The thing about the feet regulation that is a little bit tricky is that parking stall widths vary.
Yeah.
Right? So it may end up being like, if you end up putting, 8.5-foot widths, which happens, or 9.5, it changes where that's
Yes.
going to be, and sometimes that 40 doesn't land conveniently. It might actually be, frankly,
Spaces might be better.
it might be, yeah, better to do per number of spaces.
another place I was just down there this afternoon by the Walmart and where Bed Bath & Beyond used to be, and I was actually noticing that kind of along the main perimeter road, there's a line of trees, and they're getting quite big, and I was thinking, this looks really nice.
Yeah, it does.
That's a nice area.
I didn't make a point of noticing a lot, expecting to discuss it tonight, but I don't remember what the trees were once you went into the parking area, but at least along that main outer road, it looks very good. Big improvement.
So maybe. So maybe that one is spaces apart instead of feet, to look at. The next piece there too is, again, sort of same thing as above, they can be counted towards the minimum tree density, but you still have to meet the parking lot tree requirements, which that's a section anyway, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
And then 3, I think there, so notwithstanding. All right, so that's kind of something that we touched on a little bit earlier, about,
replacement of 25%, are you in that one?
Yeah, right, the must retrofit the entire parking lot to meet the tree planting standards set forth in this section. Maybe that's kind of the section where I was thinking, maybe there's something in there where we can,
hey, it's a 3 to 5, you come up with a planting plan, because maybe it's not fair to say, congratulations, you got a new tenant that's taking one of your 50 spots, now you have to go put in trees in your entire parking lot. I don't think that's fair.
so.
5, all trees planted in accordance with the standards set forth in the most current version of the ISA publication. Not an expert on that, does that make sense? Kind of looking at you, Neela, for this one.
I mean, yeah, because it's a nice standard. The only thing about that, that it doesn't say that I think is a problem is that, I mean, we've all probably heard volcanoes versus
Oh,
donuts.
Yes.
Nothing in the standard says no volcanoes, and I kind of feel like we need to say no volcanoes somewhere, because we need to make sure that people plant trees that will survive.
So is that in our appendix, that we would have planting guidelines or something in addition to?
Yeah, we could.
Sure.
I know, and you know, every time I go over to Brown Road area, they do volcanoes, and I keep thinking, I don't understand. Trees seem to be,
It's because somebody learned how to do that 25 years ago, and they've not changed their ways.
So I have to ask, what's a volcano? And I have been over to Brown Road a lot lately walking. Can you tell me, like,
well, it's when they mulch around the tree trunk, so that all the water
But they
goes
pile
off.
it right up to
And
the trunk.
instead, and
You really
pile
not
it to the
supposed
trunk, as opposed to making a donut
oh,
around it, so that it holds water and gives the tree trunk air and all.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you ever see like a mound,
Now I'm gonna see them
I
all.
was gonna say, I'm gonna.
I'll be like looking all the time.
It helps discourage rot and things like that.
You have the donut
Yeah.
around.
because the tree trunk will actually start to rot around that, but the other thing too is it starts to send out roots into that, so if you do that and don't correct it right away, if you try to correct it later, you're going to kill the tree, and if you leave it, you're gonna kill the tree. So your tree is gonna be dead in a couple of years, no matter what, by putting in those volcanoes, because you can't correct it if it's gone too long, and if you don't correct it, you get rot.
So I'll ask the dumb but obvious question. If there are all these deleterious effects, why is this done?
Habit.
Because of lack of understanding.
It's a lot easier, it's a
Education.
lot easier just to throw a pile of mulch around there, make it look pretty, and then move on to the next tree.
Yeah, I guess I just assume that people that put down mulch know how you're supposed to,
No
not supposed
assumptions,
to do it.
no assumptions, you know what that old saying is.
Then if you're going planting a row of like, 50 trees somewhere, yeah, it's a lot easier, again, just to pile, it looks pretty.
Have you ever seen, like in a development where they actually have built the land up around a tree, so they put a retaining ring around the tree so that it stayed down at its original ground level? And now that everybody, that now my house and the land is way up here, like 3 feet up. That's so that this doesn't kill the tree.
I haven't seen that.
I've not seen that.
What I see is that,
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's usually in an older kind of wealthy development that they used to do that, to save these big, beautiful trees. And then they would have, but they had to fill the land or something, and they were gonna kill the tree, so they went way out, built a wall around it, filled it up to that point, but they left, as she said, all the root, the drip line kind of open, so that it could get water and air and it wouldn't rot.
Okay, so you bring something up that it has been bugging me a little bit, because you mentioned how, people would do this practice to save these big, beautiful trees, right? And what we have written here is like 25% number of trees, if they go, that's what our trigger is. But what if you kill all 25 big, beautiful trees and you leave a bunch of spindly things? That.
Quality of the tree.
Yeah, the number doesn't speak to the quality at all.
Oh, we got into heritage trees and all
Sorry,
that.
I'll ask that question with Chop.
I don't have a problem, my thought is just thinking of poor Mike and how he's gonna enforce it.
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
heritage trees and everything, and I think that's a good idea, but going to enforcement and thinking through
Well, it's
how it gets
always about
enforced.
enforcement.
Yeah,
So if it's a law that can't feasibly be enforced, or
but I
how
wonder
going
if,
flag, which are the heritage trees, if
but-
we-
I wonder if that's something that we can, again, right, enforcement, how are we gonna do that? It's not feasible, but it is feasible for us to potentially put something, just some language in here that, again, somehow encourages people, or it's just informative.
Oh, right, if at least
Like,
if it's
hey-
there, if we want to enforce it, we can.
Well, we can
If it's
try, but
not
at least it's
we can't
it's
enforce
something more than people have now.
Right.
They didn't know about volcano versus donut.
Right.
Okay, if we have that in, a planting guideline thing, it's there. Maybe that's some other, maybe there's a bunch of information to put in the planting guideline. It's not for you to enforce, it's to inform people who are.
Best practices, yeah. I mean, the other thing too to consider is, I mean, we have to calculate tree points for any of these properties. So what if instead of just 25% of trees, what if it was a certain number of tree points? And that is the
And that's,
threshold.
in fact, a lot of you sent that one chart that was a grid of all these,
Yeah.
a lot
I've
of
looked
it
at a
was
lot of them.
tree points.
That had come up.
Or define heritage tree. A lot of them
Yeah.
have heritage.
That discussion around, I don't know if it was points, but I definitely remember heritage trees coming up when Simon was originally talking about this, because, right, it was, when we talked about points versus tree units, that was in there.
But we can just have that as a pin in there as a question of how do we want to answer that?
Yep. It's 8:03, I do want to save time for some other stuff, and it being a light agenda night, I'd rather be here all night, so, let's pick the rest of this up. There's a bunch of questions that we have for Dan anyway, I think that's the bulk of what's left.
Yeah.
A lot of the remaining things that we had questions here about the tree bank, now that we've actually done that in practice. And, as we move on to this, the next section was, compliance to minimum tree density. We've got a ton of examples from this meeting and the previous meeting on April 8th that we talked about that I think we could add in there, and that's something I can work on. But, so I do want to move on to the next agenda item, other than, we'll see if Dan can make it to the next meeting, or whatever meeting he can make it to next. If it's the next one, that would be great. But if he doesn't, I think
There's still enough left for us to talk about at the next one that we do.
Certainly is.
do that. The next one's also gonna be, well, easier, I'll say. So discussion of proposed solar law changes. So the last time that we discussed it was our joint meeting with the Board of Trustees.
Right?
And it's on me to go and at
Yes, it
least,
is.
at least draft some stuff. So I've not done that yet. It's been busy at work, so I've not had time to. I will be on a flight 2 times this weekend, so I will have it done into you, at least an example of, hey, we'll move this. It might not be exact, but the things that we covered in the trustees meeting, I'll have a draft to you all about that on Monday at the latest, probably Monday, because I don't think I get back until late Sunday. So about, kind of moving some of the sections and just really everything that we discussed.
Mostly it was, the decommissioning.
Decommissioning plan, yep.
And then the size, I think, for the main, kind of the biggest.
Yep, those are really the two,
biggest-
the bulk of the
that-
things.
yeah.
Everything else, I think, was pretty, I'm not gonna touch the grammatical things in there, like, okay, solar energy system should be lowercase, uppercase, I don't care. I am going to modify the 2 farming definitions to leave 1 in there, but I will take the stuff from the 1
I just
definition
wanted to
and
be
incorporate
sure
it into
that
the
they
other.
were both, it was all covered.
It will.
By deleting one, I got
Yeah, we can get
nervous
rid of
about
one,
that, because
yeah.
I hadn't looked them up.
And the 1 references the other one anyway, so it's kind of odd to me that they are separate, but I'll make sure that that's in there, we can,
I
at
think-
least as a first.
I just think it's
First take.
important, yeah, because if it references them, they're going, I don't know.
Yep.
So that's kind of where we are.
With that, I've not updated, I've thought about it a lot. I have thought about it, like, I still haven't done that, but, so I will do that this weekend.
We all have
Where
things
you
like
going?
that.
Oh, you pain.
It's gonna be hot, do you wanna go instead? You can call yourself Michael and get on that flight, it's all you've got. No, it's going to be hot and humid and full of bugs and snakes and other things, I'm sure, so, it'll be fine.
I've seen my first snake here this year, so.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen any here yet,
Oh,
and I've been out in the woods a lot, yeah. I usually see them up on Hammond Hill quite a bit, I haven't seen them up
I
there.
have window wells around my basement window.
Yeah, I have some of mine too, and I was
And they're
around the
almost
entire
always
house.
in there, so you have to really be quick in the cold weather to get all your leaves out before,
They find a new home.
yes.
Okay, so next item is the trustee report, which was, yes. Was
that it?
there a meeting since the joint meeting?
not that I've been to, I haven't been to a trustees.
I'm just gonna say we
We
should
have a
probably skip
holiday, I'm
over
sure,
the,
a holiday,
Wasn't it the budget?
the 15th.
There wasn't one, yeah.
The second meeting was the joint meeting.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure everybody,
Oh, yeah, this is the.
We were all there. We were all there.
It's very,
Yeah, that's why.
I wasn't there in any capacity.
okay, so we obviously discussed the tree law, and if you want to, the video's up on YouTube, right? Yeah.
no, the solar law.
Or the solar law, not the tree law, we discussed the solar law. Other than that, it was,
The budget?
just the budget and,
I don't even remember.
Well, it was my turn to take this, so you want me to
oh,
just
no,
say it on?
sure, yeah.
Go
for it.
ahead.
So the first thing they did was they voted to approve the $257,000, sorry. They voted to approve it for the material bid and sidewalk improvements, and they awarded it to Core and Main of Binghamton. And I think that's for, is that for the Graham Road? I think it was for Graham Road, right? Graham Road West and Dart Drive? Dart Drive. And then they voted to pass a resolution of the proposed budget for 24-25. We discussed the tree law.
Solar law.
We agreed
Tree law, I said the same
the
thing.
next 2 to 3 meetings, and then have it, and then send it back to the board. And then the seller law, Ronnie wants the planning board to make our changes and keep Carolyn and the board in the loop, and then the board of trustees will provide feedback. And that was it. Ronnie reminded everybody it was election for the 2 trustees, and then it was Drew Rydell's last meeting.
So tomorrow, are you officially a trustee tomorrow, May 1st? Isn't it our new,
I have not been to a trustees meeting in a long time.
isn't that,
Peter's been
no,
filling in
that's
for me.
that's when our, everything.
Oh, yes, yeah.
At first, then
that's-
everything gets, yeah.
Yes, Peter would be at that one too.
That's the marathon meeting.
That's the marathon meeting, I was gonna say, that's a good one
I'll be in
to,
Milwaukee.
It's not Florida. I'll trade you, I'll you want to Florida.
Awful experience in that, yeah. No, thank you.
Since they're here. Okay, other business, Lorraine? Jim?
No?
Camila?
Nothing.
Lisa,
Well, it's not May 1st yet, so I'll wait.
pretty close to May 1st.
Comes
In
again.
a few hours.
We've got 4 hours yet.
Would you like to provide any updates that you have about Arrowhead?
Well, no, because every time
Arrowhead? Well,
About the remaining outstanding items for,
Lansing Meadows.
no, I sent around an email which sums it up pretty much. What's going on, I think that probably Natalie and I'll have a meeting here sometime before our next meeting.
Did everybody see the email that Mike sent?
Yep.
So then we also have decision to make, potentially, if we want to do something at the next meeting.
I mean, not really a decision to make, it just happens.
Yeah, it is, it's
It's just a
automatic.
We
default
don't have to vote on
administration.
anything?
It defaults. He defaulted.
I thought we had to vote for sure, okay, well, there you
I'll
go.
double check, but he defaulted.
I think your email said a couple of things he was working on with John Courtney or with somebody.
Yeah, but he's not gonna,
He was supposed to be with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think
Yeah.
it's working is the part of the problem.
But it's not gonna, that part won't get done by tomorrow.
And I don't think the trees will be
You see
planted by tomorrow.
Here and they're working tonight, but.
Lisa, you better be patrolling down there at midnight.
I just drive by on a regular basis, it's not hard.
Got, next meeting, David Huckle dropped off it's actually, I gotta look at it closer. It looks like a lot line adjustment for Borkwater. I had mentioned this.
Oh, yes, you
Yeah.
did.
I had thought that at the last meeting, we were going to have the storage facility for Dick's,
Right.
and all of a sudden, they're ghosted me.
Well, maybe they're not gonna happen.
I don't know, so. Another thing is, getting kind of ahead of myself, but the late June meeting, the second June meeting, I won't be here. So I don't know, we'll see what's on the agenda, you have to decide what you want to do.
The
Not that I
25th.
don't know vital importance, but
the 28th, 25th, yeah.
no, I won't be here. So, you'll have to see what's,
See what's,
I think I can miss one, Mike, give me that stink eye.
Oh, no.
I think Mike was leaning towards us all missing
Towards us all missing the meeting if you want.
I'm gonna be fly fishing in Alaska.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Oh, my God, really? That's exciting. That's.
Yeah, that is.
Are you gonna bring us some
It's
salmon?
better than Milwaukee.
Or Florida?
way better than.
I was gonna say, wait a minute.
Actually, get Amy out in the stream and have her fly fish.
There you go.
That's cool.
That'd be fun.
Fresh salmon for everybody.
Salmon and trout, yeah, I'll bring it back for everybody.
Well, yeah, maybe let's regroup in either the last meeting
Well, we'll see what's on.
May or the first
Maybe
meeting
won't be
in
necessary.
June, yeah,
We'll see.
yeah,
we'll
we
see
might
what's
be
happening.
able
I just wanted
to.
to give you fair warning. That's
Yeah,
Okay.
Our next meeting is May 13th, right?
Yes, you're not gonna be here?
I will not be here.
Right. Everybody else going to be here?
I will be here for the 13th, but the last meeting of May, I will not be. I don't think I ever have been for the last meeting of May.
Okay.
Do you plan it that way, Jim?
No, it's just, I have things I usually do around Memorial Day, so, which aren't here, so.
Okay.
Anything else, Lisa?
oh, yeah, that's the day after Memorial Day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate.
that's why.
I think so.
Can't win.
Okay,
No, it's true.
Natalie?
Yeah, no.
Mike, anything else you want to give us updates about?
Like, remember,
So we just aren't hearing anything about any of the sort of things that have come up in the last year, like transactions, nothing.
Beers?
Millcroft,
Their
nothing.
bond, right? Beers needs to do their bonding.
not anything.
No, but they need to do their bonding.
Oh, yeah.
Wow,
I think they'd be chomping at the bit to get going right about,
you'd think
right
so.
about now.
Well, that's,
They'll just all come at once.
I know, yeah, around June 25th.
I was just gonna say right around June 25th.
That's the way it works, you know. We'll cover for you.
Friday before you leave.
Okay, then if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:13 PM. Motion,
I'll second.
Second by Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
thanks, everybody.